The crushing reality of my family is that they did not merely dislike me. They desperately required my failure to maintain their own sense of superiority. For my entire life, my parents treated me like a permanent embarrassment, while my older brother was celebrated as a financial prodigy who could do no wrong. I was just the invisible middle child, expected to quietly handle the heavy lifting in our family business without ever asking for recognition. But the moment I emptied my life savings to buy an abandoned, dilapidated property, they officially discarded me like a piece of garbage, completely unaware that my worthless patch of dirt held the exact weapon I needed to tear down their entire empire. Growing up in a wealthy suburb of Chicago, I learned very early that my father viewed people as assets to be manipulated rather than human beings to be loved. He had built a highly lucrative commercial real estate firm, and for 3 grueling years, I practically lived at the office as the company's lead logistics manager. I routinely put in 70-hour weeks, completely overhauling our failing distribution network and saving the business millions of dollars in operational costs. My father explicitly promised me the vice president title as a reward for my sacrifice, and I foolishly believed that my hard work would finally force them to respect me. The ultimate betrayal blindsided me on a Tuesday morning during our quarterly executive board meeting. I sat at the massive mahogany table, ready to present my 3 years of supply chain data to our primary investors, when my father unexpectedly gave the floor to my brother, Austin. Austin was incredibly arrogant and entirely incompetent, spending his days on golf courses rather than looking at spreadsheets. Yet, as the projector screen lit up, my blood ran absolutely cold because the slides he was presenting were mine. He had stolen my files the night before, erased my name, and was now pitching my blood, sweat, and tears as his own master plan. I sat frozen in my leather chair, listening to my brother confidently butcher the technical logistics metrics I had spent months formulating. I looked over at my father, fully expecting him to intervene and correct this blatant theft, but he was simply beaming with radiant pride. The moment the presentation concluded, the room erupted into applause, and my father proudly announced Austin as the new vice president of operations. I felt physically sick, my stomach churning with profound humiliation, as Austin soaked up the unearned praise, realizing that the promotion I had sacrificed my personal life for was being treated as a trophy for the son who merely showed up. The moment the boardroom cleared, I marched straight into my father's private office and demanded to know how he could hand my hard work to my brother. My father did not even look guilty, calmly telling me to lower my voice and calling me hysterical. He explained that while I was good with behind-the-scenes details, Austin possessed the executive presence and charisma needed to be the face of the company legacy. He told me to keep my head down, support my brother, and remain a team player, which was his code word for staying in the shadows while the men took all the credit. In that exact moment, the invisible string that tied me to their approval completely snapped, and I realized with chilling clarity that I would never win in this family. I did not scream or cry. I simply walked out, packed my desk into a cardboard box, and spent the next 48 hours liquidating every single asset I owned. I gathered every dollar to my name and signed the paperwork to purchase a rusted, abandoned gas station on the forgotten outskirts of town. It was a weather-beaten property covered in overgrown weeds and shattered glass, but I knew the local transit geography perfectly, and I was determined to transform it into an independent shipping hub. The following Sunday, I walked into an exclusive steakhouse for our mandatory family dinner, where my parents and Austin were already drinking expensive wine to celebrate his stolen promotion. I slid into the booth, and before I could even speak, my father demanded that I have the weekly logistics reports sitting on Austin's desk by dawn. Instead of complying, I reached into my purse, slid a formal letter of resignation across the white tablecloth, and told him he would never get another report from me. My mother let out a dramatic gasp of horror, while Austin looked on in absolute confusion. I then pulled out the deed to the abandoned property, announcing that I was done building their empire while being treated like a disposable servant. Austin snatched the paper, And when he realized the location of the run-down gas station, he threw his head back and burst into loud, mocking laughter that echoed through the quiet restaurant. He slammed his hand on the table, telling me I had completely lost my mind and calling me a hopeless failure, who would be utterly bankrupt within a single month. My mother chimed in, whispering fiercely that my trashy venture was an embarrassment to their elite social circle. My father delivered the final crushing blow, coldly informing me that since I wanted to play business owner with a rusted pump, I was officially fired and completely severed from the family trust. He stripped away my future inheritance and terminated my health insurance, fully expecting me to break down and beg for my job back. Just then, the waiter placed the expensive dinner check on the table, and Austin maliciously dropped the folder right into my lap, sneering that I should consider it my first independent business expense. They all stood up and walked out of the restaurant, abandoning me completely. I sat alone in the booth, staring at the $840 bill while my checking account balance sat at exactly $400. I had to max out my very last emergency credit card just to pay for a meal I barely touched, and the sheer gravity of my terrifying situation threatened to pull me under. But as the plastic card cleared, my intense terror morphed into an unbreakable resolve to turn that toxic dirt patch into an empire. The next morning, I moved into the gas station's damp back office, sleeping on a cheap canvas cot surrounded by decades of hoarded junk left by the previous owner. For a week, I endured brutal physical labor, waking up before dawn to haul heavy metal debris and mountains of garbage into rented dumpsters. My hands were covered in blisters and my lungs burned from the thick dust, but the memory of my brother's mocking laughter was pure rocket fuel that kept me swinging. Finally, I turned my attention to the back storage room, where a severe roof leak had caused the drywall to crumble with black mold. I put on a heavy respirator mask, raised a 12-pound sledgehammer, and swung it forward with every ounce of frustration left in my body. The hammer smashed through the brittle plaster with a satisfying crunch, but on my second swing, a deafening metallic clang echoed through the cramped space. The violent vibration shot straight up the handle, jarring my teeth loose and causing me to drop the hammer to the concrete floor. I stepped closer to the gaping hole in the wall, waving away the thick cloud of grey dust to see what I had hit. Hidden completely behind the cheap, water-damaged drywall was a massive, solid steel vault door, and as I stared at the heavy lock, I realized my worthless patch of dirt was hiding a secret that would change everything.